So good morning, Wake Forest Baptist family. Hope you can get out and enjoy this incredibly beautiful weather we have in today. And I hope during this season of Lent that God is planting some seeds of life-giving love and peace and joy in your soil of your life these days. So will someone please say the blessing? Those are words that sometimes you hear around the family table, maybe right before a meal. But they're really words that, in one fashion or another, many of us continue to say for different reasons. It may be that the saddest line of all of Scripture, there in Genesis, Esau, in a weak moment, he sells off his birthright for nothing more than a bowl of soup. And Isaac, his little brother, swoops right in and takes over the blessing that comes by having the birthright. And so Esau, when he realizes what has happened, that he's lost the blessing, we see that line, he cries out, "Bless me. Bless me too, Daddy. Please bless me." It means, as a pastor, I've heard that cry from so many times, and I've cried it myself sometimes. People who all they ever heard growing up were these kind of messages. If only you were more beautiful. If only you were smarter. If only you were slimmer. If only you were craftier. If only you were better. And that's now how they end up viewing their life, that they just never, ever quite measure up. They never really got the blessing. I confess there's something that prompted this for me. I'm on a Baptist Children's Home in North Carolina podcast, and just the other day, it had an interview of a psychiatrist who talked about childhood trauma. It was amazing and maybe not totally surprising how many ministers on this podcast, as we were chatting with each other afterwards, all talked about their own childhood lack of blessing and how it has shaped even their ministry. And then on Monday, Martha Harmoning's devotional to me just gripped me. It was so true to life. You know, she was very honest about saying sometimes there's that temptation to work harder in order to be super person and super woman and even super mom. We all, I think, get that. And then even this morning in my very early men's group at 6:30, we were talking about how hard it is to just do nothing because we get so much of our value by doing something, by our work, by our labors. That's what identifies us, it seems, and so it's hard to slow down. But the blessing in the Old Testament literally meant to speak well or to praise someone. The word that fits for me and all that is the word delight. You've heard me, some of you, say through the years, I think the number one gift a parent can give his or her child is delight. That the child knows that the parent just takes utter delight in just who that child is. Yeah, my parents love me in so many incredible ways, and their model of faith continues to shape and be a model for me. But to this day, of course, they're long gone. I don't ever remember them saying the actual words, "I love you." So I say it to men and women all the time. So much that my wife forever is saying, "Don't be flattered." He says that to everybody. But I think words are important, and words can be a blessing, because we can't remember what has never been said. Really, is there any greater gift that we adults can give each other, whether it's as a spouse to a spouse or a friend to a friend? In my first church where I was for 10 years, and I loved them and they loved me in such wonderful ways. But every year it was part of the tradition, the deacons would gather together and give me my annual review. Usually it would last for about 15 minutes and be over with, and I got nothing out of it at all. And finally one year, one of the old deacons said, "Pastor, you know how I hate being called pastor." He said to me, "No word is a good word." And I'm glad that at least it wasn't a bad word. But if there's a good word to say, it doesn't amount to anything unless it is said. No word is a good word. It's a terrible philosophy to live by. Yeah, when I was in seminary, my church administration professor gave all of us young guys, and it was guys, a word of wisdom. He said, "Listen, when you go out in your church, if anybody ever says anything nice or sends you a note or an email or whatever," and didn't have email then, "save it. Because there are going to be days that you wonder if anybody in the world even cares what you're doing, or anybody even wonders what you're up to. And so here's my blessing folder, 40-some years. Notes on those days when I need a blessing. If nobody's giving me one, I pull out my folder and read the blessings that people took the time to give and what a difference that makes. So I have a friend who always says, have a blessed life. And I do, but there are days that if I'm not careful, I don't hear that blessing. And days that I get hungry and thirsting for some blessing. And I bet I'm not alone with that. In fact, that's what I hear from everybody at some time or another. But there is just this. Here's what I believe. On my days when all those other voices finally give way and I tune in to hear the true voice of God. And that is this for all of us. If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you've already been given the blessing. So will someone please say the blessing? Why don't you say it to someone today? Email them, call them, just tell them words matter. And why don't you maybe this day trust the blessing that God has already given you in Jesus Christ? Thanks be to God.